Like rightly mentioned, I'm Johnson Olowookere. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer and I'm a Azure solution architect. So I also have some certifications in AWS and I currently work as an Azure lead infrastructure in a Microsoft partner environment. So today we'll be learning about some key concepts such as cloud models, cloud benefits and considerations, cloud services, Azure architectural component, and some core Azure resources. So I know a lot of people have been hearing Azure, and so the question is, what is cloud computing? So when you hear cloud computing is basically the delivery of computing service, right? Delivery of computing service over the internet, enabling fast innovation, flexible resources, and economy of skills. So when we talk about cloud computing, we are saying it is the delivery of computing service over the internet. So just like, I don't know if you have seen a data center before, or even imagine that you have your computer system at home, whether desktop or laptop, and that computer system has internet on it, right? And you are providing service to other people. So people, your client can access that computer service, that computer server, whether desktop or laptop, over the internet and access the services that you are rendering on that computer system. So for instance, you can have what we call a file server where you can store files. So imagine people getting access to the files stored on a computer system over the internet. So that's what cloud computing is all about. So for cloud computing to be functional, you are delivering computing service and it must be internet enabled. So if there's no internet, we can't have anything called cloud computing. So, and why do we do cloud computing? Is to enable faster innovation. So when we talk about faster innovation, imagine that you need a server that is 10 core, maybe you need a core i7 server with 8 gig RAM. So if you want to buy that particular system, right? Before you buy it, before they ship it to you, and it gets to you in Nigeria, it takes days, weeks, and months, right? So for faster innovation, there is a solution provider. He has thousands of those computers already in their data center. So when you need it, all you need to do is to tell this solution provider that I need a core i7, I need a core i9, I need a core i5, I need 16 gig RAM, I need this quantity of storage, I need a 500 gig SSD disk. So all you need to do is to specify what you need and it will be provided. So there's a CSP, we call them cloud solution providers, such as Microsoft, AWS, Google. We also have which other one do we have? We have others, right? We have Alibaba. So these people, we have Huawei. These people already have these computing resources that you need. They have it running 247. It is powered with AC cooling. And all you need to do is to tell them, I need this particular resource, and you pay for what you need. So it is faster innovation. It is flexible resources. When we talk about flexible resources, we are saying that imagine that you have a laptop and that laptop is Core i7. You can't wake up tomorrow and say, I need a Core i9 system. It doesn't work that way. But with cloud computing, if you have a Core i7 and in 5 minutes time, you need a Core i13 resources, all you need to do is to click a button and you have a Core i7. You have a Core i13. If you have a 8 gig RAM and let's assume you want to do graphics activities and you need maybe 32 gig RAM, all you need to do is to click on a button to ask for that particular resource and it's available. right? So that's when we talk about flexible resources. So when we talk about economics of scale, so you pay for what you use, right? So imagine that you need a laptop, for instance, right? Before you get that laptop delivered to you, you have to pay for it. But for the economics of scale, all you need to do, all you need to do is to click a button, pay for what you use. So you pay hourly for the cost. You don't pay at a chunk, right? If you need a laptop, you have to pay maybe ₦1 million to get a laptop. For cloud computing, you pay per seconds, right? So you pay for what you use. So when we talk about the computing service, we are talking about compute resources, networking, storage, and analytics, and there are several others. So when we are talking about compute, we are talking about CPU, we are talking about RAM, we are talking about processor. When we talk about networking, we are saying is it the IP address, the gateway, the virtual net, the networking, and the likes. When we're talking about storage, we're talking about the disk, the storage account, is it HDD disk, SSD disk, premium disk, and the likes. So when we're talking about analytics, we're talking about machine learning, AI, artificial intelligence, and all the other solutions that are in the analytics environment. So for this cloud computing we're talking about, there are three types of cloud. We have the public cloud, we have the private cloud, and we have the hybrid cloud. So public cloud is owned by cloud services or hosting providers such as Azure, Microsoft Azure, we have AWS, we have Google Cloud, GCP, that's Google Cloud Provider, we have Alibaba, we have Huawei, and others, right? So public cloud is owned by cloud services or hosting provider. Public cloud provides resources and services to multiple organizations and users. So as long as you are an organization, you are a user, you can use it. So for Azure, for instance, millions of organizations, millions of users are using Microsoft Azure. That makes it a public cloud. And like I said earlier, cloud is accessed via secure network connection, typically over the internet. So you can use the internet, you can use a VPN gateway, so that's virtual private network to connect to it. So it is typically connected over the internet, public internet, private internet such as VPN gateways and the likes. And we have private cloud. So private cloud is when an organization creates a cloud environment in their data center. So for instance, if I have a company, I can have private cloud that is only meant for myself. So I am the only one. I am responsible for operating the services, and I am the only one that have access to that particular cloud. It is not open to other organizations. So for instance, MTN, they can have a data center that is their own private cloud, and it is only accessible for it is for MTN by MTN. So the data center is created by MTN and is only accessible to MTN as an organization. And we have what we call hybrid cloud. So hybrid cloud is a combination of public and private cloud. So it allows application to run in the most appropriate location. So for instance, if I want I can have a database whereby I want the application data to be on my own cloud, while the compute can be on public cloud. So that's a combination of public and private. So some organization will tell you that this particular application should run on private cloud, while this another one should run on public cloud. So it can be a mixture of public and private. So what are the benefits that we enjoy when we say cloud computing? So one of the benefits is high availability. So your servers, they are available every seconds of the day. It is highly available. So there's no instance of power failure whereby your servers goes down. There's no issue of internet is bad. So it is highly available. We also have what we call scalability. So scalability means that you can scale, you can change the size of your server. So imagine I have a 2 core server, so I can move from 2 core to 4 core. I can move from 4 core to 164 core just by clicking of a button. So it is highly scalable. I can move from 8 gig RAM to 32 gig RAM. I can move from 32 gig RAM to 2 gig RAM. So I can scale up, I can scale down based on my need, right? So that is what we talk about scalability. We have what we call global reach, right? So for instance, Microsoft Azure, they have data center in over 64 nations, right? So if I need a data center in South Africa, in America, in UK, in Europe, wherever, I have a data center there. So that's what we talk about global reach. And we talk about agility. So agility is the ability of resources to make available as soon as possible. So for instance, if I need a laptop, before I will buy the laptop, before the laptop will come to me, it will take a while. But for cloud, those resources are already existing. All I need to do is to subscribe to it. We also have what we call disaster recovery. So since it is located in 64 region, over 64 region, I can recover from one region to another. So for instance, if I am running my solution in region A, if region A has issues, the solution will be replicated to another region, and I can continue using my solution. So disaster recovery is top notch. Also fault tolerance, right? So if power goes down, there is a standby generator, there's multiple tolerance, right? That ensures that the fault that you encountered is minimized as much as possible. Also elasticity. So the if I need 100 servers, it is available. So I don't need to wait. It is elastic, right? I can increase at random as I want it. Also, we have what we call customer latency capability. Like I said, so if my customers are located in, let's say, United Kingdom, all I need to do is to deploy my solution into a data center that is in the United Kingdom. So this will reduce latency, right? So latency is the ability. So when you talk about latency, so imagine that you want to download a particular file. So latency is the time it takes from when you click the button download till when that file is completely downloaded. Another explanation of latency is, for instance, you want to open a website. So when you click www.google.com, so latency is the time it takes for that website to be displayed on your screen. So, and one of the powerful tools of latency is to ensure that your solution is closer to the end users who are your customer. So if I have a solution that will be used by people in Germany, for instance, it is wise that I select a data center that is in Germany. Also, predictive cost consideration. So when you are subscribing to the cloud, right, you can know, okay, if I run this server for 1 hour, how much will it cost me? If I run it for 1 week, how much will it cost me? So you can predict the costs, right? And also security. It is highly secured. So Microsoft as a company, for instance, for Microsoft Azure, Microsoft has invested over 6 billion US dollars on security. So it means that all the security tools that you need is already provided for you. So we have consumption based model, right? So like I said, it's pay as you use. So cloud service providers operate on a consumption based model. So you only pay for the resources you use, right? And this leads to better prediction. It ensures that prices for individual resources and services are provided and you are built on actual usage. Just imagine that I have a laptop that I only use weekends, for instance. But so for pay as you use, you only pay for that time that you are using a laptop. So even though I am the owner of a laptop from Monday to Sunday, for cloud, you only pay when you use it. So if I only use it maybe on Saturday morning, that was the time. That was the only when I would pay for it. So cloud computing is on pay as you use, right? You only pay for when you use it, and we have different types of service, right? We have infrastructure as a service, we have a platform as a service, and we have software as a service. So for infrastructure as a service, we are talking about you renting servers, virtual machines, storage, network, and operating system from a cloud provider. So infrastructure as a service is when you rent servers, you rent virtual machines. So when we're talking about virtual machine, we are talking about a laptop that is virtualized, a system that is virtualized, a server that is virtualized. So that is virtual machine. So the word virtual means that it is a virtualized environment, just like when you are playing a virtual game, right? So that's when we talk about virtual machine. You can rent storage, you can rent network, you can rent operating system. So that is infrastructure as a service. For platform as a service, so for platform as a service, right? The the cloud provider, they have a server for you, and on that server, right, they have done it in such a way that you can use it for building your solution application, for testing and deploying your software application without focusing on managing underlying infrastructure. So for platform as a service, you don't need to manage the servers, right? All you need to do is to log into that server and test, build, and deploy your software solution. So for infrastructure as a service, you manage the server. You are in charge of the server. For platform as a service, the cloud solution provider, Azure in this instance, is the one that manages the server. Why all you need to do is to go into this to the server, install your operating system you like, maybe Windows or Linux, and install the development tool, you restore the database management, you install the business analytics tools. So for software as a service, otherwise known as SaaS, is when users connect to cloud-based applications over the internet. So we have solutions such as Microsoft Office 365, emails, calendars, YouTube, Netflix, WhatsApp. So those are software as a service. So the provider, for instance, for Netflix, the people that owns Netflix, they have already provided Netflix as a software for you. All you need to do is to log in and you consume the hosted application or the hosted apps. So Office 365, Netflix, YouTube, all those, they are in form of a software as a service. So you can compare the three cloud service model: the infrastructure as a service, the platform as a service, and the software as a service, right? So they have, so for instance, infrastructure as a service is most reliable cloud service, and it allows the user to configure and manage the hardware. So you can manage the CPU, you can manage the server itself. For platform as a service, it allows you to focus on application development, right? And the platform management is handled by the cloud provider. So you don't need to bother yourself about managing the server. All you need to do is to focus on deploying your application. For software as a service, SaaS, it operates on a pay-as-you-go pricing model where you use softwares so such as Office 365, Teams, Zoom. Those are softwares that you use, and they are mostly used on a subscription model. For instance, for Zoom, you subscribe for it, you pay based on the model that you want to pay for, and use the application. So for each of these data center that I mentioned earlier, right, the on-premises, which is the private cloud. So for instance, most companies in Nigeria have their own private cloud, right? Have their own data center. So it means that they are responsible for the entire running of the data center. But for infrastructure as a service, for instance, a customer is only responsible for managing the storage, the networking, and the compute resources. The the cloud service provider, Azure in this instance, is responsible for managing compute, networking, and storage resources. While the other part of it, data and assets, application runtime, OS, and virtual machine, the consumer, the end user, is responsible for managing that. For the platform as a service, the customer is responsible for managing the data, the assets, the applications running on that particular platform. Why Azure is responsible for running the storage, networking, compute, virtual machine, operating system, and the runtime, right? For software as a service, the end user, the consumer, is responsible for managing data and the access. Why Azure is responsible for managing the application running on the runtime, which is running on the operating system. The operating system is running on the virtual machine, and on that virtual machine, you have compute resources. So compute resources are the CPU, the RAM, and the likes. The networking is the IP address, the the networking resources, and the likes. While the storage is the disk, the SSD disk the HDD disk that is attached to that particular VM, right? So these are the responsibilities, how the responsibility is being shared amongst the models, right? So like I mentioned that Azure is in over 64 regions and in over 140 countries. So this is just a map of all the regions that they are located, and a region is made up of one or more data center in close proximity. So a region is one or more data center in close proximity, and so you can see that in Africa we have just two data center, which is in South Africa North and South Africa West. So in South America we have one in Brazil South, we have several in Australia, we have several in Asia, we have several in Europe, and we have several in North America. So this is the location of those regions and the countries where we have a data center. So for region peers, we have region peers. So two regions appear together when they have at least 300 miles between each other. So for the availability options, so we have if you are running a single virtual machine, that you are running a single VM, we have your SLA. If you are running multiple VMs in the same availability zones, and we are running VMs in multiple availability zones and in multiple regions. So based on the need of your application, you determine the availability option that you go for. So we also have availability zones whereby we have three zones in the same region. So this availability zone, each one is a data center. So availability zone 1 is a data center, availability zone 2 is a data center, availability zone 3 is a data center. And this is necessary so that In case a data center fails, your solution keep running in another data center. So availability zone is necessary so that your data keep running. It prevents against downtime, against data center failure, and the others. And these data centers, they are connected through private fiber optic networks, right? And each data center is equipped with its power system, its cooling and networking. So we know that if you are running several servers in the same room, it will get very hot. So you need proper cooling, you need proper AC to cool the room, and you ensure that you have multiple power supply. So if you have for instance, NEPA, you have generators, multiple generators to ensure that if one power supply goes down, your system can keep running. So these are the resources that we have in the cloud. So the virtual machine is like a server, for instance, a laptop, a desktop. You have storage accounts where you store your data. You have virtual network. So for networking purpose, so your VMs need to be connected together. So that's why we have virtual network. So you have app service. If you want to deploy your application, you want to deploy your website, that is app service. And we have we have different types of database. We have SQL database, we have Postgres, we have MongoDB, and the likes. So, and we have functions. So if you want to run functions also, and in the cloud, right, we have what we call resource group. So resource group is a place where you store your resources. So if you have VMs, storage accounts, and the likes, so you can store them in a resource group, right? And resources can only exist in only one resource. So resource group is just like a bag. Let's just imagine you have a bag whereby you can store your resources. So resources can exist in different regions, and you can move resources from one resource group to another. So we have what we call Azure Resource Manager. So these are the methods that you can manage your resources. So you can manage it through Azure Portal. So we have a place called Azure Portal, which I will show us later. We have an Azure Portal where you can click resources. You can use PowerShell. So a lot of us that are maybe admin, system admin, you can also use PowerShell in the cloud. We have what we call CLI, that's Cloud Command Line Interface, that's CLI. So it's also series of commands that you can use to manage your resources. And we have what we call REST application, REST clients, right? And so when you want to use the cloud, we have what we call Azure subscription. So Azure subscription provide you access to the Azure rights, and in that subscription, you can create multiple resource group, and in that resource group, you can store your resources. In a resource group, you can store your VMs, your storage accounts, and the likes. So these are some of the services that we have in the cloud. So we have VMs. Like I said, VMs is like a laptop or a desktop. It's a server, right, in the cloud. App service is where you can deploy your solutions, right? So you can deploy your application, you can deploy your website, and the like. Azure Kubernetes service, where you can deploy your Kubernetes solution. So those of us that are running Kubernetes cluster on premises, also we have a Kubernetes cluster in the cloud. And we have so we have what we call Azure Virtual Desktop. So just like we have virtual desktop on premises, we also have virtual desktop in the cloud. So a VM, like I said, is a software emulation of physical computer. So a VM is a physical computer application. Can deploy your website on the Azure App Service. So we have Azure Container Service is a lightweight virtualized environment that does not require operating system. So an operating system has been created. All you need to do is to create your container instances and your Kubernetes service. So a virtual desktop is a virtualized desktop, just like we have virtual desktop on premises. So for instance, if you have your laptop, right, and you have several people can access that laptop, so that's what we call a virtual desktop. So for virtual desktop, you have you give access to different. I have a company and I can create. I want multiple users, right, to have access to the same. It ensures that different people can have access to the same system. So each of them will have their own space where they work, and each person's access does not affect the other person, right? So instead of running multiple servers, multiple laptop for all of them. So imagine that I have 100 users in my environment. I create one system, one laptop or one desktop, and then I allow all of them to have access to that system. So my cost is reduced because I only have to run one operating system. I only need to manage one particular system. So all of them we have access to it. So it's what we call multi-session access, right? So each user have access to their own session, and what one particular user is doing does not affect the other user. So we have Azure networking services. So in the networking services, we have VNet, virtual network. So it enables resources to communicate with one another, just like in on-premises where we have networking, where we have network. So it ensures that resources communicate with each other over the internet. We have what we call VPN, that's virtual private network, VPN. So we use VPN to send encrypted traffic, right? So if I want the data I'm sending to be encrypted, right, I use VPN. Why Express route is also another way of sending traffic through an encrypted network over the internet. So we have the storage services. So storage services include the storage accounts, includes the disk, for instance, my VM, your server, it has disk, right? It's running on disk. So that's why we have disk storage, and we also have what we call Azure Files. So Azure Files is meant when you are running your file server, right? You use Azure Files for that. And for database, we have different types of database. We have Cosmos DB, we have SQL database, that's structured query language. We have database for MySQL, and we have database for PostgreSQL. So no matter the type of database you are running, it is available in Azure. So we have what we call SQL managed instance. So this managed instance ensures that your database is managed by the cloud people, Azure in this instance, and the users only are concerned about the database itself. So that's the brief summary of what Azure is all about. So before I take a question, I would like to just show you Azure Portal. So for instance, this is my subscription, right? I mentioned that in Azure, we have subscription. So this is my subscription. This is the name of my subscription. So this is my Azure subscription, right? So this is the name of my subscription, right? And so for instance, these are all the resources that I have in this subscription. So I have just 10 resources. So you can have close to it. You can have about 700 resources in a particular subscription. So these are my resources. So you can see a virtual machine. So I have a VM, I have a public IP address, I have a network security group, I have a virtual network, I have network interface. So you will notice for a physical server, if you have a server, for instance, the server has IP address, the server has is in the network. The server has network interface, right? Network interface card. The server has disk, right? So these are components of a server, right? So I have a VM, for instance. So if I click on this VM, you can see the characteristics of my VM. Just a moment. So this is my VM, for instance. So these are Azure portal. This is one of the ways whereby we can communicate to the cloud resources. So this is my VM, for instance. You can see if I want to connect to the VM, I can connect to it, right? I can start it, I can restart it, I can stop it, I can hibernate it. So you can see is in West Europe, right? This is in this particular subscription. This is my subscription ID. You can see the status of the VM is running, right? If I stop it, it will be in stopped, right? You can see that it's running Windows, that's operating system. This is the size of my VM, for instance. It's a 2-core, that's 2-core, and that's 8 gig RAM, right? So this is the IP address 172 dot. So this is a public IP address, and you can see, like for instance, this my VM was created in 2025, right? So these are some of the, so a VM we have public IP address and private IP address. So this is private IP address, while this is the public IP address. You can see that's 2-core. It has a 8 gig RAM, right? And it's running Microsoft Windows Server, right? It's running 2019 data center. So these are the information on my server, for instance, right? So let's assume I want to connect to this particular server. So all I need to do is to copy the IP address, right? And then there's what we call RDP. So RDP, that's remote desktop connection, is used to connect to the server. So for instance, I can connect to this server, right? All I need to do if I want to connect to the server is username and password. So let me see if I can remember the password. It's been long I've connected to this particular server. Using the IP address, so I connected via username and password. So this is my server, for instance. So you can see, so this is just like another computer system. So you can see the Windows background, right? You can see the cycle bin, you can see the desktop. So this is just like a computer system. So I can have files, blah blah blah. So you can see this is just like a computer system. So a VM is just like a computer system, a virtualized computer environment, right? So that is a VM. So I want to show you some just a moment. So this is back to my Azure portal. So for instance, let's assume I want to scale. So like I mentioned, so for this VM, for instance, is a two-core server, right? So if I want to move from two-core to eight-core, all I need to do is to come here. So for instance, I can resize and I change the core, right? I can move from two-core to eight-core to 16-core. I can move to as long as I want, right? So from here, if for instance, let's assume I want to run a Black Friday market, for instance, if my server, I'm hosting an application on it, and I want to use it for Black Friday. And I know that particular Friday there will be a lot of traffic, right? I can just scale to 16 core, and after that particular day, I can come back to 2 core. So that's the scalability scalability power of the cloud, right? So we also have security. We have a backup, so I can back up my server. I can do I can recover from a particular point. So when you back up, it's like you are keeping a backup of it. Let's assume I want to back up by 9 p.m. every day. So every day by 9 p.m. automatically it will be backing up. So if I need to go back to a particular day, I can go back and restore it. And we have some I can do auto shutdown. So for instance, if I want my server to be shutting down maybe by 5 p.m. every day, I can do automatic shutdown. I can run commands. I can do updates just like you do updates on your system. I can do updates here. I can run policies, right? I can do change tracking. I can do some form of automation, right? So these are the you can see the disk. So I mentioned this earlier. So you can see, for instance, this particular server, it has 127 gig RAM. So 127 gig RAM, right? That's the storage is 127 gig. So I can change from 127 to 256 to 1 terabyte to 10 terabytes, right? You can see the operating system and the likes. So this just so you can see that this operating system, you tell you that is a Windows Server, is 2019 data center, blah blah blah. So an activity log, it shows you all the activity that is happening on that part. So if anybody log into this server, you will see it in activity log. Access control is where I grant access to people. So if I want one particular person to access it, I go to access log, right? And if I want to monitor my system, so this monitoring to give you the CPU, like if you want to monitor the usage, how it's being used. So that's where the monitor comes. So I think I will stop here. So if anyone have question, you can ask. So thank you for everyone for listening. So you can ask your question at this junction.